Hi everyone. I'm excited to be here today to talk to you about some of the miracle stories that are happening right here in our own city, in our own state, every day. My name is Tony Kausha, and the title of our show is Tony's 50,000 Coincidence Miracles. Please note, this show is not about religion, and we're not trying to change anyone's religion, and we're not trying to get you to join any religion. It's just about miracle stories. I don't know of any religion on the planet that doesn't talk about miracles. That's why religions begin, because they have something that's telling them there's really a God. But we're not going to get into that. We're going to just talk about miracles and leave the decisions about all that up to you. So we don't care what religion you are. We just want to talk about miracles. If you are an atheist, I think you'll enjoy the program as well, although I can't guarantee you'll remain an atheist very long after you hear many convincing stories, coincidence kinds of stories about miracles. You can email me your own stories if you wish. We'll try to use all we can on the show. I can't guarantee we will, depending on volume and time, but you're welcome to send your stories on to us, and we will mention them when we can. You can send them to the following email address. But please notice that if we do use your story, we won't mention your name. We'll keep you anonymous. And we suggest that in your story, when you send it to us, don't use your correct name. That way anyone listening will not be able to figure out that it was you that sent the story in. The email address you can send your stories to is very easy to remember. It consists of 2 words and 3 numbers. The first word is Tony, spelled Tony, and the second word is and, spelled AND, and the numbers are 777. So once again, the name is Tony and 777 at AOL.com. Well, let us begin. Our first coincidence miracle story today is about a marriage made in heaven. I met a couple who shared with me that they've been married now for 3 years. They think they've got the best marriage they've ever heard about. And what happened was the man had relocated for a job from Connecticut and had been living in Seattle, Washington because of the job. And after a while, he decided, I guess he was there a couple of years, he decided he wanted to move back to Connecticut. So he had some family and friends in Connecticut. He quit his job, moves back to Connecticut with the goal of finding a job in Connecticut. He accidentally and very casually meets a woman at a Starbucks in Connecticut once he lands here. And they accidentally met each other, and they started talking to each other at Starbucks, and they had a session of maybe 10-15 minutes introducing each other and talking about the schools they'd gone to in the areas, etc. Turns out they had grown up in a similar area here in Connecticut, but did not know each other. And then about 2 weeks later, there was a block party where the woman lived. The woman lived in Connecticut already, and the man had moved back here from Starbucks. But there was a block party where the woman lived, and so she went to the block party, and very providentially, very coincidentally, the man who had moved from the West Coast, from Seattle, and who had met at Starbucks, he was a relative of that woman who was throwing the block party, so he shows up. And there, 2 weeks after they met at Starbucks, they met again here, and they started dating, and this was like 5 years ago. But they feel this whole thing was a match made in heaven. The fact they met at Starbucks, and both of them are prayerful people. Both of them had been praying for to have a nice relationship. They were looking forward to meeting someone that they would eventually marry. So all of this for them is a tremendous miracle, coincidence miracle, that the man moved here from Seattle, Washington at the time he did in order to meet the woman at Starbucks. And then 2 weeks later, he's at a block party of a relative, and this woman he met at Starbucks just happens to be a neighbor. So a tremendous story. They make movies about things like this, like Hallmark movies. But this is a real true story that had happened. And they were a delightful couple. I have to tell you, I've met a lot of married people. They certainly look to me like they are the epitome of the perfect marriage. They really, they've been married 3 years. They still hold hands. They still kiss each other on the cheek. I mean, it was obviously that these two people are very much in love. So I just could not wait to share this amazing story with you. Our next story is something that happened to me. I was asked by a church in Connecticut to attend one of their Saturday night evening meeting, co-ed meeting, male, females. They have a movie night once a month, and I was asked to go in and give a lecture about my 2 books and my mission and my website. So I prayed about it. I got inspired. Yes, it was a great place to go and give a lecture. And on the way over, at a 4-way intersection, I was praying for, guidance and for God's blessing before getting to give the lecture. And I got to a 4-way intersection, and a car came into the intersection while I was there, and it had 4 number 7s on its license plate. Those of you who have been listening for a while, you know that 3 7s is God's holy number. So I was very impressed by that. The next morning, I got a phone call indicating that the people were delighted with the lecture about the book, etc. on the night before. It was a Sunday morning. I went off to Mass. After Mass, I stopped at a park to walk and pray and talk to God about other things in my life, spend some quiet time with God. It's a good idea to do this every day, by the way. Give God some quiet time every day. And at a certain point while I was walking in the park, I got inspired. It was time to leave. And I saw a couple of clues that indicated it was time for me to go. I left, and I got to the same exact intersection where the night before I had seen 4 7s. And in the exact identical 4-way intersection, another car pulled in while I was there, and it had 3 number 7s on its license plate. So very much confirmation by God, because I was inspired to leave the park at a certain time. I drove at a certain speed to get to this 4-way intersection at the precise moment when that other license plate was arriving with the 3 7s. And this is all about coincidence miracles. I try to get into great details with everybody so you can see how intricately God plans. He inspires you to leave at a certain time. He gets you to drive at a certain speed. He has the other car driving at a certain speed, and you meet at the same intersection. And the proof is that I saw 4 7s the night before at that exact intersection. So God had another car arrive there the night before with 4 7s. And now God has 3 7s. And why do I say God has this and God orchestrates this? Is because He inspired me to leave the park where I was walking and talking with Him. He inspired me. It was time to leave. And that's why God orchestrates. He inspired me to leave at a certain time. And when I see the 3 7s, it proves that God was inspiring me. Okay, so I hope this is taking hold with people who are listening. When you notice these coincidences that are unbelievable, precise meetings or seeing numbers, etc., in the same place in 2 days in a row, or when you hear about the earlier story where somebody comes from Seattle and goes to a block party and meets someone that he casually met at a Starbucks. I mean, these are perfect clues that God is orchestrating all of the tiny minutiae, all the tiny steps in our lives. And that's why people say God loves us, because He spends time doing all these great orchestrations for us. Our next coincidence miracle is from a man who tells us he's been leaving plastic bottles in his garage for quite a while now, to have the deposits for returning the plastic bottles. He's been gathering them up. And one day recently, he was inspired to gather them up for Saturday morning, because on Saturday mornings, when he's driving by a certain place in town, he consistently sees a bag lady who pushes a cart, and she goes around from garbage bin to garbage bin, picking up plastic containers like this and taking them over to a local business to turn them in for cash. And so he was inspired one Saturday morning to do that. He packs up the car. He had a lot of bottles, it sounded like. And sure enough, he was inspired to go on this certain Saturday morning. And he tells us that he got to the same intersection where he's been seeing that woman many, many Saturday mornings. And she was there. And he's delighted to tell us that he filled up more than half of her push basket. She has a cart that she, I guess, borrowed from the store. And he did more than half fill, and she was ecstatic. And so I think the point of this story is, some of us are not impressed unless we hear someone won $1 million. And some of us get impressed when we find somebody who is gathering bottles. Somebody came by and gave them more than half of a cart of bottles. We get excited about that. The whole thing is charity, loving other people, caring about other people. A simple thing like bringing the bottles to a bag lady who's trying to make ends meet, obviously going around at the garbage bins and looking for plastic bottles every week. She's trying to do something. And so this was a story of love. Someone was inspired to be kind and love that woman. And it's a great story to share. Hopefully, many of you out there are doing the same kinds of things. Our next coincidence miracle is somewhat similar to the last story. I had to bring my car in for service recently. And when I brought the car in for service, there were some people in the waiting room waiting for their cars to be finished. I was inspired to give out cards about my book, the radio shows, and the 2 books I wrote and the lectures I've given. Giving out cards like that helps some people to engage and start asking questions about God or about miracles. So I'm able to share many of the stories we talk about on the radio with people who are interested. And I shared some of those stories and impressed a couple of people with the fact that God does walk with us and talk with us every single day. We can talk to God all day long. We can ask him what to do. I've given them a lot of evidence. And certainly my books convince people, and our weekly radio shows do as well. And I met an older gentleman there. He was about 70 years old, and he was very happy to hear about my story. And he said, by the way, I have a mission too. I've been inspired by God since my retirement. I reach out to young people, teenagers, when I see people wherever I can, and I drum up a conversation, get them to start talking about things. Maybe I bring up the weather, or ask them about sports, or I comment about their hairstyles or their clothing. And I've been very blessed that I bring up things, and I wound up having a lot of discussions with young people, and I'm able to give them some life-changing advice, telling them things I've learned in my life. And I've made some friends, some young people friends. They ask me questions. I've even had some calls from people later on who knew my name and looked me up and called and asked for advice. So I have a mission too, and I feel God blesses me. My mission is to reach out to young people and tell them some of the things I've learned in my life that can be helpful to them. So I hope this last story about this man who's 70 years old, he's found a mission in life. He goes around and he introduces himself to young teenagers or 20-year-olds. And wherever he can, he gets inspired to give them suggestions and advice, and it's working very well. And there are other people out there, other missions. They look up family members to make sure their family members are okay, or they look for elderly people. They reach out to elderly people in the community, see if they need groceries or help, etc., etc. So we can all find missions. The key is keep asking God what to do. That's the key. If you keep asking God what to do, you'll notice he does, in fact, talk to us. He talked to all the saints that way. Our role is ask God questions, and he will answer us. God bless you all. I'll talk to you next week.